Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Toast Eatery has become my go-to lunch spot. It's this nice outdoor restaurant where you can actually hear yourself think, which is rare in the city. I'd been having a stressful week dealing with demanding clients, so I was looking forward to a peaceful meal that afternoon. I had just ordered my usual sandwich and iced tea when this whole crazy situation started unfolding. At first, I thought maybe someone was just having a bad day, but it quickly became clear that this was something else entirely. There was this woman, let's call her Karen, and she was literally shoving around this elderly couple near the corner of the restaurant. The couple looked confused and scared. The old man was trying to shield his wife, and they both kept looking around like they didn't understand what was happening. Karen started yelling at them about following her. She claimed she knew what they were doing and told them to stop. The elderly couple just stared at her in confusion. They were clearly not following her, they were just trying to find a table like everyone else. But Karen wasn't having it. She kept shouting that they had been following her all day and needed to stop immediately. The old man finally had enough. He was just trying to protect his wife, so he took a swing at Karen. He missed completely. The guy was probably in his 70s, but that just made Karen even more angry. Karen pointed at him and yelled to everyone around that they all saw what he did. She claimed he tried to hit her, and that everyone witnessed his attack. By now, pretty much everyone in the restaurant was watching. This one guy seemed like he worked nearby based on his business clothes, tried to step in. The businessman told her that maybe everyone should calm down, but Karen refused to listen. She insisted that the elderly couple had been following her, and told everyone that someone needed to call the police right away. Multiple people had already called the police. I even saw at least 2 people recording everything on their phones. Karen was acting like she was the victim, but everyone could see she was the one who started pushing people around. Then Karen started this bizarre rant about wanting the real police, not fake police. She kept repeating this demand for someone to call the real police. She said this over and over for like 3 minutes straight. It was so strange. Like, what does that even mean? The real police? When she tried to leave, the businessman blocked her path. He suggested she wait for the officers to arrive so she could tell them her side of the story. Karen refused, insisting she wasn't waiting for anyone and claiming she knew her rights. The businessman offered to stay with her until the police arrived and asked her to just cooperate with them. But Karen completely rejected this idea. She claimed that if she gave the police her information, they would make her disappear. I was texting my co-workers about this whole thing because honestly, it was like watching a train wreck. You couldn't look away. When 3 police officers finally showed up, they started taking statements from everyone. One of them could speak Mandarin, which was perfect because the elderly couple didn't speak much English. They kept nodding and pointing at Karen, clearly trying to explain what happened. The officer dealing with Karen was incredibly patient. He spoke calmly and professionally, even though Karen was being completely unreasonable. He asked her for identification and requested her version of what happened. Karen immediately questioned whether he was real police and told him she wanted to speak to the chief of police. The officer explained that he was a real police officer and that the chief wasn't available, but that he could help her. He asked for her name to get started. Karen refused and insisted she would only speak to the chief of police. She told the officer that he had to call him immediately. This went on for another 5 minutes. The officer explained multiple times that he couldn't just call the chief of police, but Karen wasn't listening. Then Karen suddenly stood up and announced she needed to use the bathroom. The officer told her that the restaurant wasn't allowing restroom access right now due to safety protocols and asked her to sit back down. Karen protested that he couldn't stop her from using the bathroom. She tried to walk away, but the officer had to stop her. That's when he decided to handcuff her. The officer told her she was being detained and asked her to cooperate. The moment those handcuffs went on, Karen completely lost it. She screamed about police brutality and called all the officers terrible. She threatened to sue everyone there and insisted she hadn't done anything wrong. She started kicking at the officer's legs like she thought she was some kind of martial arts expert. The officer had been so patient up until that point, but enough was enough. The officer brought her to the ground with help from another officer. One held her arms while the other controlled her legs. Karen started screaming for help, claiming they were hurting her. She begged someone to record what was happening and kept yelling about police brutality. She told people to call the real police and insisted she was the victim. The officer told her to stop resisting and promised they would help her up if she complied. But Karen kept insisting she was the victim and calling everyone corrupt. She kept struggling and yelling for several more minutes. Finally, they managed to get her to her feet and walked her to the police car. The whole thing lasted about 45 minutes. The elderly couple was shaken but okay. Other customers bought them lunch, which was really nice to see. The officers were professional throughout the entire ordeal. When I watched the police car drive away with Karen in the back seat, I thought about how this could have all been avoided if she had just acted like a reasonable person. Instead, she turned a simple misunderstanding into a public spectacle and ended up in handcuffs. My lunch finally arrived when things were winding down. It had gotten cold, but honestly, the entertainment was worth it. I'm a sergeant in the Army, been serving for about 8 years now. Got married young to my high school sweetheart, and we had our daughter when I was 22. Military life isn't easy on families, but we make it work. This assignment had us living in what you'd generously call a rough neighborhood. The base housing was full, so we had to rent off base in the local economy. Think crumbling buildings, garbage in the streets, and people eyeing your car every time you parked it. Petty crime was just part of daily life there. And what made it worse was this scam the locals had going. Some of the police were in on it too. They'd recruit informants to report cars with expired inspection stickers or fake ones. These snitches would get access to the inspection database and everything. The first day I processed in, my sponsor warned me about it. My sponsor told me to keep my motorcycle inspection sticker in my wallet instead of on the bike. When I asked him why, he explained that these people would peel it right off and use it for their scam. He said they break into cars, steal everything, then leave a note saying the police have your stuff. You have to pay fines to get it back. I thought he was exaggerating until it happened to me. The night before the incident, I'd made a stupid mistake. My wife's passport had expired, and I needed to take both my daughter's passport and mine to the base to get paperwork started for renewing hers. Being the forgetful person I am, I stuck both passports in the glove compartment so I wouldn't forget them in the morning. Next day, I walk out to my car to drive my daughter to school, and there's a note on my driver's seat. Someone had jimmied my door open. The note read, "Your inspection sticker is fake. Your belongings have been taken to the police station. You must pay fine and fix inspection or receive another fine." I was already running late for work, and my daughter was waiting by the car with her backpack. She asked me why there was paper in the car, and I told her someone had broken into our car. When she asked if we were in trouble, I reassured her we weren't, but we needed to make a stop before I dropped her at school. The thing is, my inspection wasn't expired. I just renewed it 2 months earlier. I had all the documentation to prove it. At the police station, I showed them my inspection papers. The desk sergeant looked them over and said there had been a mistake. He apologized and asked me to wait a moment. I sat there getting more frustrated by the minute. My daughter was going to be late for school. I was definitely going to be late for work, and some random person had rifled through my car. I told the desk sergeant I wanted to file a police report for theft. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head and said there was no theft since the items had been returned to police. I said that someone had broken into my car without permission and taken my property, which was theft where I came from. That's when it hit me. This guy had taken 2 official US passports. Even though they were sitting right there on the desk, the act of taking them could be serious. But then I remembered my wife's expired passport sitting safely at home, and an idea formed. I told the sergeant he was missing something and that there had been another passport in the car. He said there were only the 2 passports on the desk. I said my wife's passport had been in there too, making 3 passports total. The sergeant shuffled through the items again, looking confused. He said that only 2 passports were there. I said exactly. and that someone had stolen a US passport. I told him I needed to file a police report and contact the embassy immediately. I watched the color drain from his face. He started speaking rapidly in the local language to another officer. He suggested that maybe I was mistaken and that there were only 2 passports. I told him there was no mistake and that I needed that police report now, along with the name of whoever had brought these items in that morning. The sergeant tried everything to talk me out of it. He offered to have his officers search for the missing passport. He suggested maybe I left it at home. He even hinted that filing false reports was illegal. I stood my ground and told him it wasn't false, that someone had broken into my car and stolen US government property, and that the embassy was going to want to know exactly who had access to these documents. He gave up and processed the report. I could see him sweating when he wrote down the details. When I asked for the name of the person who'd brought in the items, he suddenly became very cooperative. Within an hour, I was on the phone with the embassy security officer. I reported the stolen passport and explained that someone had broken into my vehicle and taken 3 US passports. I told him 2 were recovered by local police, but 1 was still missing, and that I had the police report and the name of the individual who had possession of the documents. The embassy officer said they would handle it immediately and asked me to email the police report. I told him I was already sending it. 2 days later, I got a call from the embassy. They were issuing a replacement passport at no charge and had coordinated with local authorities. The guy who'd been running this scam was now facing federal charges for theft of government documents. A week later, when I saw him being walked into the police station in handcuffs, he looked right at me through the window, and I could see the exact moment he realized who I was. One of the local cops I'd gotten to know came over to me and said that the man was very angry with me. I said I bet he was. The cop explained that the guy was facing big trouble now because stealing foreign passports was a very serious crime. I said good. The scam stopped completely after that. Word got around that messing with military families could bring serious trouble. My wife got her new passport without any hassle, and we never had another problem with car break-ins. Everything was going smoothly until last month when I got hit with what I can only describe as the plague. It started as what I thought was just a regular cold, but within 48 hours, I was barely able to swallow water without excruciating pain. My throat felt like I was gargling with broken glass, and my fever was through the roof. After 2 days of getting progressively worse, I dragged myself to the emergency room. The doctor took one look at my throat and immediately started running tests. He confirmed it was tonsillitis, but not the regular kind. This was the angry, vengeful type that makes you question every life choice that led you to this moment. The good news was that it was definitely tonsillitis. The bad news was that they couldn't pinpoint exactly what was causing it. It could be bacterial or viral. He started me on some strong antibiotics to see how I would respond. When I asked how long until I'd be better because I needed to get back to work, he told me at least a week, maybe more. He emphasized that whatever I did, I shouldn't go around other people until they figured out what this was. I was highly contagious right now. So there I was, looking like death warmed over, barely able to speak without wincing, and definitely not fit for human interaction. The logical solution seemed obvious: work from home. My entire job can be done remotely. I had all the necessary equipment, and I could avoid turning my office into a biological warfare zone. I called my boss and explained the situation. She was sympathetic and told me it sounded awful. She immediately agreed that I should work from home until I was better and reminded me to take care of myself. Everything seemed reasonable until human resources got involved. The next morning I got an email that made my already pounding head throb even more. I called the HR representative, let's call her Karen because, well, you'll see why. She told me she had gotten my request to work from home, but she was afraid she couldn't approve it beyond today. I asked why not, explaining that I was contagious and my doctor had specifically said not to be around people. She simply said that policy was policy. If I needed to work from home for more than 2 days in a week, I needed a doctor's note. No exceptions. I pointed out that I had literally just told her my doctor said I was contagious. She responded coldly that she didn't make the rules. I could get a note or come into the office. Those were my only options. The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted a doctor's note to confirm what I was already telling them, that I was too sick to come in. But fine, I'd play their game. That evening, I found myself back in the emergency room because the pain had gotten even worse. It was the same doctor from before, and when I explained what HR was demanding, his reaction was pure gold. The doctor asked me to clarify the situation. He wanted to make sure he understood correctly. I had told them I was contagious with an unknown infectious disease, and they wanted me to come into the office anyway. I confirmed that was correct, unless I got a doctor's note saying I should work from home. The doctor's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then what I can only describe as righteous indignation. He told me he was going to write me a note, but not just for a few days. He started writing, and I could see him getting more animated when he went. When he finished, he explained that he had written me off work for a minimum of 1 week, not work from home, but completely off. He had also added that infectious diseases require more than 2 days to improve. Maybe that would teach them some basic public health sense. When I read the note, I smiled despite my sore throat. It was beautiful in its simplicity and devastating in its implications. The next morning, I scanned the note and sent it to Karen with a brief message explaining that here was the doctor's note she had requested. She could see he recommended I stay off work entirely for a minimum of 1 week due to my infectious condition. The response came back within an hour. Karen pointed out that the note said I couldn't work at all, not work from home. I agreed that was correct. That was what the doctor had recommended when I told him about the company policy. She had said I needed a doctor's note if I wanted to work from home for more than 2 days, so I got one. The doctor felt that given the infectious nature of my illness, complete rest was more appropriate than trying to work in any capacity. Karen protested that the policy was just about working from home. I explained that I had followed the policy exactly. She had required a doctor's note for more than 2 days, and here it was. The doctor's medical opinion superseded company policy when it came to health matters, didn't it? There was a long pause before her next email, where she said she would need to discuss this with her supervisor. What followed was the most relaxing week I'd had in years. No emails, no meetings, no pressure to be productive while feeling like death. Just me, my couch, some good shows, and plenty of healing tea. The antibiotics finally kicked in around day 4, and I could actually start enjoying my unexpected vacation. My colleagues later told me that Karen had been frantically trying to find a way around the doctor's note, but legal had shut down every attempt. A doctor's medical recommendation trumps company policy every time, especially when it involves infectious diseases and public health. When I finally returned to work the following week with a clean bill of health, my boss pulled me aside. She mentioned that she had heard about the whole HR situation and called it brilliant malicious compliance. Karen had been unusually quiet ever since. I told her I had just followed the policy they insisted on. My boss laughed and said she had put in a request to update the remote work policy. Turns out forcing sick people to get doctor's notes when they're trying to be responsible citizens isn't great for morale or legal liability. Seeing Karen's face when I walked back into the office, completely healthy and well-rested, was perfect. She couldn't make eye contact and suddenly seemed very busy with her computer whenever I passed by. A few weeks later, the company announced a new policy allowing managers to approve remote work for illness without requiring doctor's notes for the first week. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.